I like to use these little parchment baking sheets just to put on my pans because, and you could use a cookie sheet. It doesn't really matter. As long as it has a little bit of a lip to it. The thing is, you just don't want any extra of the oil or the juice to flow over to the bottom of the oven. Then it gets to be problematic, right? So here we are. First baking sheet. I have to get another one because I only had one. And I get the baking sheets, just put them on my pans. And then it's probably good to think about this because one of the dishes we're going to do I recommend coconut oil, and the other two dishes I recommend olive oil. So you can decide on which pan if you want to combine. I also think thematically here. So the bigger pan, I think, is what I'm going to use for the two vegetable dishes, and then for the fruit dish, if you want to call it plantain fruit, I'll use the smaller pan. So I have the fruits and vegetables here on the counter. I'll just show you. And that's kind of weird with this camera. I don't know if you can see, but maybe you don't care because you know what they are. So plantain, beet, Brussels sprouts in their bag, and parsley, they're on the side. I also will bring out my edible flowers because I like to decorate, so it's kind of fun to have them available too. So here are the edible flowers. Again, I think I showed those to you last week. Now, the other thing I want to take out of my spices, so I have the oils out already, but I'm going to take out the salt and the pepper. And then I had suggested that we might want to use ginger. And also, I had mentioned nutmeg, and I had mentioned as well cinnamon. All of these powders. I'm looking for my cinnamon at the moment. I know it's in here somewhere. Things just tend to disappear sometimes, get out of order. Maybe I just have cinnamon in a package. No, that's not cinnamon. Well, somewhere here I have to find cinnamon, so hold on. I know we've heard saying, here's my cinnamon. It's out of alphabetical order. Wrong drawer. Okay, so there's the cinnamon. Now I also want to just check to see sea salt. Yes, that's important. The fresh thyme and the fresh rosemary, also key. So I'm going to get those out now. Did not disappear. I'm just pulling things out of the refrigerator. If I had a swivel camera, it would be easier. So if we decide to use it, here's the Dijon mustard, and then I have the thyme and the rosemary. So these are key. Then I just want to make sure I wash my hands. Good. So now I know that the oven is heated up, so that's perfect. The beauty of each of these dishes is they literally take about 5 to 10 minutes to prep and then 10 to 12 minutes to cook. So that's why we're going to try to do 3 tonight, or we are going to do 3, and then we'll just go with it from there. So I want to start with the plantain because I like to just set the plantain aside. And since it's going to have its own pan, it'll be easy to do. So I chose a reasonably good-sized plantain, and it's nice and ripe. I've had it for about a week. And with that said, the best thing to do is to trim, and I don't know, it's probably not easy to see here, So I don't know, I'll just have you, maybe, you can follow along as I talk. So I'm trimming the ends of the plantain. I like to just trim the ends off because then I can make a slice down the center and peel it open. So I will then, with my knife, just choose a part that seems pretty stable and just run the knife down the peel, and then I open it up. And usually it separates if it's ripe pretty effectively. If it's overripe, sometimes it can stick. If it's underripe, it's like, I don't want to leave the peel. So now we have a beautiful piece of plantain. And of course, it's very important with the plantain that we eat it only after it's cooked or fried, not if it's raw. So I want to slice it, and I want to slice it at about 30-degree angles and approximately maybe a 1/4 inch thick. Could be a little less or a little more, just depends. But a 1/4 inch I always find is about right. So you get some big slices, but you could also decide, maybe they're too big for you, and you say, oh, I don't like the long pieces. I'll show you. Here's a very long piece. You might prefer, oops, slide out of your head. You might prefer to have so you can see that's probably about maybe 2 inches, 2.5 inches. And then once I'm done with the slicing, and this is so easy, you see, you just nice slices, all roughly that 1/4 inch. And then I keep the end. So that's done. So I'm going to move my little pan over because I'm going to use a little pan for this. Now the little pan, I like to make sure that I pre-oil the sheets. So I just spray a little bit. And the reason for that is this helps it to cook underneath. And I'm using coconut oil for this. Now you could use coconut oil that you've melted, or if you have one that doesn't get hard that's in the house, you can also just put it onto use that as well. And you could just brush a little onto your baking sheet, or you can drizzle it, however feels right. But I sprayed my Coke, it's 100% organic coconut oil, so very nice just to spray. And so what I'm doing is I'm just setting my plantains now onto the sheet. And I kind of suggested here that if you make like 3 rows today, because we can play with maybe some different spices. How about that? So I'm suggesting we could do it, well, you could even do 4 rows if you have enough. And some people like this, so I say on there that, with a big plantain, you can get maybe 2 to 4 servings. It just really depends upon the individual. And maybe you can only get 2 if they really like them. It's so nice to mix it. You can pair it with rice, with beans, with, so many things. But for tonight, we're just, it goes really with so much. So here we have our plantain, and beautifully done. Now I'm just going to spray. Now, if you have a pastry brush and you want to brush your coconut oil on it, you could do that. So I just make it sure that the top is coated very nicely with the coconut oil, and I set the coconut oil aside. Now from here's where we take our salt, and I recommend, again, I use a little salt dispenser that I twist, but you can also take your fingers if you have some salt, and you can just sprinkle a little bit on each one. This is the Himalayan salt. And so you're thinking, oh, what are all of these qualities and benefits? Well, the beauty of every dish tonight is, while they have some subtle differences, they're all oriented around helping with our immunity and with our digestion system, and as far as cleaning out the lungs. So very important. So what I've done is I put my salt on. And so it's really, again, you're not going to really see. Let me just see here. Turn the camera so you can see. So that's what it looks like. It's hard to see the salt on there. I don't have a bright light shining unless maybe I could use my phone, but in a minute. Now, I mentioned on the sheet that we could also use some of these other spices if we wanted to just add a little bit of flavor. So I said we could do some powdered ginger. So you could play with that. Sometimes you can even mix them. Some cinnamon or some nutmeg. You could even use cardamom. The cardamom I didn't take out. We mentioned it before because you could put that into your tea that you made. But if you want, a little ginger, so you can, again, you could just sprinkle a little on. So why don't I do that? I'm going to do that on 1 row. Why not? Just a little ginger on 1 row. So we've got some salt, and then we have the coconut oil for the sweetness. We have the plantain itself, which is a little astringent, and it has some sweetness to it as well. And then we have the ginger. And so now you get a little pungency going with this. So I did that on one row, ginger. Now on the other row, I'm going to do nutmeg. Why not? So this is why I say you could have 4 rows. So I'm going to do 4 pieces here with nutmeg on it. And then I'm going to choose a couple of pieces with cinnamon. I put a couple of pieces of cinnamon on, or just a little bit of cinnamon. This I'm going to pinch because I don't have a. And again, cinnamon and nutmeg and ginger, they go well together. So if you want to even mix them. And then the other 3 pieces, or 2 pieces, I'm going to leave just with the salt and the coconut oil on them. So basically here, I have 4 different wonderful savory, sweet experiences just with this one dish. So it's all decorated now. I'll show again with the camera. You can see the coloring difference. And so on the upper left corner, I have just the salt and the coconut oil. Then I come down to cinnamon for the 3. Then I move up with the nutmeg and then over to the far with ginger. So now those I can set aside. So that's done. And that probably took us maybe 5 minutes. So that's set aside. Now for the next dish, and let me know if you need me to slow down. For the next dish, I'm going to use the big pan. And this again, if you have 2 racks in your oven, you can easily have out of the pan, but I'm just using 2 tonight. So I'm going to use my sheet. I'm going to spray it with just a little bit of olive oil, just to coat the bottom. So again, I have my 100% organic olive oil. And I think for this one, I'm going to start with Brussels sprouts. And the reason I suggest Brussels sprouts because my beet will get all red and messy. But even before I do that, I either want to switch out my baking or my cutting board or wash it, and my knife the same because I just use plantain. And if you eat raw plantain, it will make you not feel so well. And so now I brought my cutting board back over and my clean knife. And it's fine if the cutting board's just a little moist, no problem there. I'm going to take out a couple of bowls because I'm going to want a bowl for each of the items. And in fact, the parsley is going to have its own bowl too when we get to that level. But why not? Let's deal with the parsley at the end. So I get my Brussels sprouts. And again, you can choose however many. I recommend 5 to 7 Brussels sprouts per person. But if someone doesn't like them, then maybe you just give them 1 or 2. We're going to have them. So 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So Satyavani and I are going to eat this tonight. So I think what I will do is, we have lots of food, I think. So I'm going to just do 10. So I chose 10 Brussels sprouts. And now set my Brussels sprouts aside. I'm going to rinse them. And then I just bring my colander over here and I have the bowl set nearby. So with the Brussels sprouts, you want to cut the end off where it was attached to the stalk. So I do that. And then with each one, I then slice it down the center. So I create a nice half. So like you're cutting the head in half from the neck up to the crown. And then I throw it into my bowl. And if there's any leaves that you say, oh, that leaf doesn't look so good, just set it aside or toss it into your bag that you have for compost or debris. But I throw the extra leaves into my bowl because those create a wonderful, savory, little flaky skin. And so with each one of these, I'm having them. Cut the end off and then have them. And again, watching what I'm doing so I don't get carried away and slice a finger. You don't need, and one doesn't really want probably to have part of a finger in your Brussels sprout. Although I guess it depends upon who you're inviting to dinner. So the first week when we focused on a tea, you know, we had this marvelous tea which we could use like for digestive purposes or at the end of the meal. Now we focused on the lovely dessert to have, but you could also have it as a little appetizer at the beginning too, to stimulate the saliva flowing to aid with digestion, or you could savor it at the end. And now we're adding these wonderful savory warming dishes for side dishes, really. But if you have three, and I always recommend having three things. So it doesn't have to be three side dishes per se, but it could be, because that could be your meal in and of itself. Or you could just have, you know, one or two of these with a main dish. So now what we've done is we have just created a nice bowl of Brussels sprouts. They've all been halved, but threw the extra leaves in there. I like to, at this point in time, it's usually my preference to then prepare with the Brussels sprouts. We use a nice strong herb, in this case, the rosemary. So here's a good sized sprig. And for 10, I think this is a pretty good. This is about 3 inches to 4 inches long. And I'm going to just pull down from the top down, maybe starting midway, and pull the little needles off. And then at the top, I can do the same. You don't really want to have the woody stem. It's a little hard to chew or to slice. So then I go through and I'm simply, let me see if I can set this a little better. Maybe you can see the side if you want. But here I am, just gently opening up, pulling off the needles from the stalk, you know, the little pieces of stalk. And then if I have some larger pieces of stalk, I set it aside to dispose of, because I really just want the needles. And all along, I'm just, you know, sending really good energies into the food and enjoying this. I don't need to be overly rushed. But I'm thinking about, oh, imagine the fragrance that's coming from this. It's quite lovely right now. And then I kind of group them together. I don't have to worry about the direction to go. And I just begin to chop. To just chop them up, little pieces. So I like little tiny pieces. So I just chop them up. Now you can squeeze it together and keep chopping. And mine had already been cleaned, but you know, you can also wash it and then put it in a paper towel and just get the extra liquid off. So that's pretty good. I think, you know, I have a few longer pieces, but it's a nice mix here. Little tiny pieces. I'll show you with the camera. And so there we go, just little pieces. There's a little remains of the Brussels sprout leaf too. So now I'm just going to sprinkle that over the Brussels sprouts, you know. And that's good. So this is there, and that's going to get mixed up in a moment. Now, I said a couple of things. We can do this. Normally when I do this, I do it with just some salt, with the rosemary. So now I'm just squeezing some salt, and I do a few, you know, again, it's to taste. You can do that 1/8 of a teaspoon if you like. The same is true with the pepper. Now, I've got a lovely mix here of that. Now I could drizzle my olive oil. I recommend about a tablespoon of olive oil. I just kind of eye it. The other option, of course, is you could take in a little bowl some Dijon mustard, and you could mix that with your olive oil, and then drizzle that over. So you could just whisk it, you know? So maybe we try that. Why not? So I'm going to, here's my little bowl, and I'm going to get my measuring, my tablespoon out, and I'll just take and you may, if you're not too much of a big fan of mustard, don't do it. But in this particular case, I'm going to get just a little bit of a tablespoon and put it in there, and then set this aside. And then I'll use my olive oil. And sometimes you might have to add just a little extra olive oil if you feel that it's not mixing well. But I think that's pretty good. And then however you decide you want to whisk it, you could use a whisker just to spin, stir it around a bit, just getting a nice liquid, because we're going to drizzle this over momentarily over the Brussels sprouts. And I may decide I'm only going to use half of this, because I feel like this is just a little too much mustard since I only got 10 of these. So yeah, so I'm going to do that. I'm just going to go with about half. Okay, and then I set this aside. And then I do say, oh, you know what? I want just a wee bit more olive oil, so that's just going to drizzle a little of that over the top. And now I'll use my spoon. I'm just going to mix it up. So I've already put, so we've got the rosemary, the salt and the pepper, the olive oil, and a little bit of Dijon mustard. And this is the grainy one too. So now what I want to do is I'm going to just gently dump it into my pan, keeping it on one side, because the beauty of this, everything gets cooked at exactly the same temperature for the same length of time. And if we find that we have to go a couple minutes longer for something, you know, the Brussels sprouts and the beets, they'll do fine together. And if you have extra in your pan, you know, you can find something in your mix here, and I'll show you. And then you can simply, you know, spoon it onto it. So there we go. So there's that one. Finished. And if you feel you need to put a little bit more salt on, you know, that can be done, you know, even when it comes out of the oven. So once again, I like to wash off my cutting board and my knife. And then I come back. And now we have our beet. So we're up with the beet. So I have this lovely beet, nice, real modest size, medium size, not small. And I'm just going to trim the end of it, the top off, and then the bottom off. So now I discard that. And I will come over and I'm going to peel the rest of the beet in the sink. Just a little extra light so I don't hurt my finger. So I have this beautifully peeled beet now, and I'm going to bring it over to the cutting board. You have to be careful too to not drip beet juice all over or get it onto your clothes, because that's a bit challenging to get out. So once I'm here, and let me just adjust this slightly. The key for the beet that I like to do, I'm not sure we can see. Can you see? Yeah, I think. You know what? Let me just move this out of the way. Come over here. Okay, so with the beet, I like to square it, you know, kind of get it into a nice square. So just cut a piece off, and you don't want to be too wasteful, but just cutting the sides just to make it a little more square. And I think that's reasonably good. I mean, I could trim a little bit off the top here too. I just turn it onto this. So now I have a nice square. Yes, cute, square. Now these other pieces of beet, you could still eat. You know, there's really no need to throw them out. They just make smaller pieces. But now the easy thing is I like to make little quarter-inch cubes out of this. So I like to choose about a quarter-inch slice, and another quarter-inch slice, and then another one. So in my case, I was able to get 4 slices. And then I can put it onto its side, making sure it's flat so I don't hurt my fingers. And again, looking at 1/4 inches, slice through. And then through. And it looks like I will also, once again, get about 4 slices. Now with this, depending upon how it fell for you, you can set it down on its side and make one more sectional cut of 1/4 inches. And you will have then little beet cubes. Very pretty. Now with the pieces, the leftover pieces, why not? Let's just roughly It won't be quite as elegant. And if you didn't want to use them, don't worry about it. But I'm going to do it anyway. Although Satyavani is not so keen on eating these. So, maybe I'll save these for the birds. I don't know. Maybe they'll want to eat them. Put them into your compost pit. So I'm just going to set those aside because, yeah, that's good. All right, for now, let's just get set aside. So I'm going to bring it over. I'm going to just keep my main wash my hands off. I'm going to wash the cutting board again because there's a lot of beet juice on it. Excellent. Then I bring it over here, set it down. Just clean up anywhere where I might think I might be trailing beet juice somewhere, like on the floor. Don't need that. Okay, so I'm back. You're there too. Very good. Now we have the thyme. So much as we did before, we get the thyme out, and with the fresh thyme, it usually comes in sprigs as well, but little tiny leaves. So it's in one sense it's easier because you don't have to chop it. But then the other thing is harder to get off the stem. So I just pull it down again. You can rinse it if you like, and then, but if it's already clean, no need, it gets baked. So here I am, just separating the stems and pulling down from the top downwards, and the leaves usually come right off. If they're a little more sticky, then you just have to be a little more finesse with it. So I like to think about this. I think I said maybe 4 to 6 for this one. It takes a little bit more because sometimes, like in this particular case, this is a really nice long 4-inch piece with lots of little leaves. And then I've done that, set aside the old stuff. And here again, I just look at it and see. So depending upon how it came off for you, if it's, you have lots of little leaves and you don't have any stems, then you might want to just sprinkle that now onto the beets. I have about a teaspoon, and I think that's enough. You could do a tablespoon. It really depends. No, actually, I'm going to add, go to probably a tablespoon. I think I like it better that way. So I'm going to take another few stems or sprigs and just shred, pull down, and get the thyme. And it also smells amazing. You enjoy the woody nature of this, feeling like maybe you're outside in the evergreens. So that's very good. So now I'm just sprinkling that over, and I didn't, but I could have chopped a little bit if I wanted to, but I feel like these are small enough leaves, there's no need to. So I just clean that up and put that in there. And then just as before, now I like to do, you could do the oil first, but I like to go with the salt and pepper. To me, it just makes more sense to do it this way. So I salt again, however, a pinch, a little less, a little more, but I'm using my little shakers and grinders. So now it's time for olive oil. And again, I eye it, but I recommend about a tablespoon. Don't want to over oil. And from here, it's time to mix. So once again, with a spoon, put it into your bowl. You can maybe see here a little bit. And just mix it around. We want to coat, just as we did with the Brussels sprouts, coat the beets. And then they should have a very beautiful color, red and green. Makes you think of the holidays. And then they too now are ready to go back adjacent to the Brussels sprouts on the pan. So like I said, they won't mix. You just keep them separate. And I just empty my piece in here and I keep them together, grouped together. You have a little space between them so they can cook. But I think of them as a community. So they're sharing proximity with one another. And that is our dish. So here we have them all ready to go. So depending upon where you are, let's see the time. Oh, how nice. Each one of them, again, took about the time. We're ready to go into the oven. So we're going to be running the program just a little longer today because we want to cook them. But if you had to run, so I'm going to put them into the oven now. The oven has been preset to 400 degrees. Each pan goes into the oven. And now I set my timer for 10 minutes. I'm going to go with 10. Now let's split the difference. Let's go with 11. So 11 minutes. And this gives me time now to, once again, I can clean my cutting board and my knife off. The only thing left to do is to prepare the garnish, which in this case will be a little bit of parsley. Or if you had leftover mustard and you thought, I really like mustard, maybe I want to put a little on, then you could do that. So I'm going to get some parsley out here and trim it. I want to rinse it off. So the parsley, again, some nice fresh parsley. Yeah, maybe a little more. I think that'll be good. I love parsley, and parsley has so many wonderful medicinal benefits. So I'll set the parsley here. I'm going to put these things away, and I'll come back to talk. All right, so now here's the parsley. And I'm just going to, I want to make sure I cut the stems off. I don't really want a bunch of stems, so I'm going to get rid of that. And then I just chop a little bit so that, once again, we have these kind of nice little heads of parsley that can be sprinkled. So gently, just gently chopping them. Yes, very nice. All right, and so you can see that. And then I'm going to, I like my flowers, so I'm going to take a couple of flowers out because they'll be pretty as well. And why not? Yeah, we'll go with a couple of the marigolds. And with the marigolds, I simply cut half of the stem, and then that will release all of the petals, but I don't want to take it apart yet. I wait till the food comes out. So I just set it aside. And then you'll have, an incredible number of little beautiful colored petals. I'll put these away too. So we've just made 3 wonderful dishes. You can add a little more salt and pepper to them if you feel the need. It's a good time to just sort of put things away. Now, I also suggested that it wasn't a bad idea to think about turning the plantains, the beets, and even the Brussels sprouts about midway if you want. You don't have to. It isn't imperative. I oftentimes just say, oh, you know what? It's not really, worth the effort. But you can decide. You can decide how you want to do that. So here we are. We're already 7 minutes left. So let's talk about the overall benefits of this. And on your sheet, I just said, this is so phenomenal because what we're doing here is with each of these dishes, we're boosting immunity. And then when you get this, we're stimulating the spleen and the stomach. So from the standpoint of whether it's Ayurveda or traditional Chinese medicine, they're both important because they have to do with enriching the bloodstream with healthy nutrients and eliminating the debris, the leftover non-essential parts through the digestive tract. So they're rich in nutrients, all of them, and that enters into the bloodstream, which then nourishes all of the organs and all of the cells. I wanted to say that with this, in fact, I think every organ system and every organ is touched upon these 3 dishes. And I specify through each one of the ingredients what they affect as well. So if I was to take, for instance, right now, I just want to see here how I would maybe characterize. I put all of the ingredients in alphabetical order, starting with black pepper, all the way down through thyme, yes. And so you'll get a sense, you go through this and say, oh my gosh, it's amazing. The 2, so Brussels sprouts and the beet are perfect for fall and winter. They're just natural that way. The plantain itself in the northern hemisphere, farther south, you'll see it regularly. You do see it throughout Southeast Asia and India on a regular basis as well. What else do I want to say about this? I put the tastes in there with each one too, and we covered the basis on that. There's the sweetness comes from the coconut oil, and then a little bit, some of the herbs themselves have some sweetness to them, and also clearly the plantain does, even though the plantain is primarily astringent, it has a little bit of sweetness too. And sometimes people will say that with regard to Brussels sprouts, that they can have a little sweetness. Most people usually like take them or leave them. I don't know. But when they're prepared a certain way, they're actually quite nice. So digestive system, huge, the immunity boosting part. So we think our gut is so important for overall health and keeping it cleansed and healthy with this. And again, all of these are made at home, straightforward, 10 minutes max, for each one, and then 10 minutes of cooking. So yeah, I don't think you can really beat that. And when they come out, they make this marvelous aroma in the house, and they're beautiful because, again, at this time of year, really from Thanksgiving on, most people are serving all brown dishes, and it's like, oh my gosh, let's get some color, because that's one of the key fundamentals from both Ayurveda and from Chinese medicine, is that you must have the colors represented too, because they evoke certain responses within the body, but also visually and in the mouth themselves. So if you don't have the colors represented, it's something like just dead brown dirt, it's like, not so much. So we get the colors, and that's why it's important for the greens and the red and the yellow in the case of the flower here that I'm doing, to integrate those in. So any questions?
I don't have any questions, no.
Did you follow along making all 3?
I did.
All right. Do you get an aroma in the house right now?
Oh yeah.
Yes. What's standing out to you at the moment?
The rosemary.
The rosemary. That's always a big hit. And that, again, that woody sense, it both and the thyme have this amazing, like, outdoorsy quality.
Yeah.
And they're both, antibacterial and antimicrobial, and I mean they're so good, and they help to cleanse the lungs. So when people are talking about the stuff that the flus and the colds and stuff, it's like the great expectorants in that, and yeah. So 3 minutes left, so now would be a good time if you wanted to turn anything. You could look. Like I said, I sometimes do and sometimes not, but if anything, I might do the plantain. But let me just see what I think. See, if I do the plantain and turn it, I don't think so. Then the spice that's on top gets, messed up, and I don't really want to do that. So I'm just I looked and I said, yeah, I like it the way it is. I'm gonna keep it that way. But with the beets and the Brussels sprouts, you could mix around. So with the Brussels sprouts, what I like to see with the Brussels sprouts is that those little leaves, the little pieces of leaves, they get nice and crispy. And that's kind of one of the ways I gauge the Brussels sprouts being done. I don't want them overcooked. But if I see that the leaves are nice and starting to get crispy, then I say, oh, that's perfect, because they themselves are wonderful little taste sensations.
Smelling the cinnamon, it smells good.
Yes. And again, we didn't overdo it with the spices. So as I said, what do we have? Like maybe 5 spices, max 3 dishes. So that, salt and pepper, those are kind of natural, but with the ginger, the cinnamon, and the nutmeg, that was just, we played with it. So you could say, oh, I don't need to make 3 different types. I could just do 1 and maybe mix 2 of them, or I just don't even do that. We did a natural one too. So have you thought about, are you just going to eat these tonight? Or are you going to just sample them, or you're going to accompany them with something else?
I think I'm probably just going to eat these tonight. Yeah. That, and then I'm going to accompany with the drink that we made on the first week as well.
Yes, that would be lovely.
Oh yeah.
I know. I so enjoy that warm. I had one yesterday. I was like, oh.
Yep.
Warm up some almond milk and then put the spices of your choice in it. So we're down under a minute now. So again, sometimes, I will leave it in for an extra minute. It just depends. But I don't like them. What I caution is that we don't want to overcook. So if there's that little bit of, like in the teeth, you can feel still a little bit of the how should I say this? I don't know if I wrote it down, but no, I did. I'm sure I did, because I wanted to say, I often use that term al dente, which references the pasta piece. But what did I say here? Let me just see, because I was trying to not reference the pasta.
You don't want it too mushy. You want it just a little bit hard.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, you want it. So I just say until tender. I just said really until tender. Yeah. So you want to feel it in the teeth. Slightly firm. Yeah, slightly firm to the teeth, not soft. So if it's too soft, then it's like, you've kind of overdone it, I think. But, some people like it softer.
And that's for the beets and for the plantain?
For the beets, and so now that's it. So I'm going to turn my oven off. So if that's for the plantain, that's for the beets and the Brussels sprouts. Once again, we want them to be done, but not overdone. So let's just see what we're looking at here. So we can take it out. Oh, that looks amazing. So I show you. Here's the camera of the beets and the Brussels sprouts. So you can see, as I was talking about with the leaves, they're starting to get nice and brown and crispy here. And so that's perfect. I'm sampling one. Oh, actually, that's heaven. So again, you might say, oh, if you put too much mustard on, you don't need to. Here's the beet. I'm going to sample the beet. I think those are perfect right now from my oven. So you can decide at yours. Now with these two dishes, you can take your parsley and you can just kind of sprinkle a little bit of parsley on each of them if you want. You don't have to, but again, I'll just show you in a moment. It just gives a little added pizzazz and color. And I'm leaving them on the sheet right now because I was going to run an errand before I eat, although I may have to change my mind and do it tomorrow. Because now I'm thinking this looks so lovely, why would I do that? So I'm going to go and check on the plantains. And the plantains you want to be a little softer. You don't want them to be overcooked. So I think, in other words, you don't want them to be dry. So I think my plantains are very nice. What I typically like to do, and I'll just hold my camera up for a second, I just turn them over and I say, oh, look, it's starting to get nice and brown. So that's perfect for me. And a little brown around the edges. And it's nice and tender to touch. I didn't taste one, it was very hot. But to me, here's my 3 dishes. And again, you've got the sample of 4 different flavors with the plantains and the beautiful different flavors and colors of the beets. So, oh, heaven. So bon appetit, Oh, and the flour. I showed you about the flour. Why not? Let me just bring this over here because it's kind of fun. So I just cut the end, and then I think I'm going to just sprinkle a little bit so maybe you see it falling down there. A little bit of color onto that. I'll show one more picture. I'm actually going to put a little bit on the plantain too because I just like it. But it looks so lovely on the beet. So there's my marigolds, and I just put them on. They so nicely come apart. And now I have all of the different tastes, 6 tastes, whether it be traditional Chinese medicine or traditional Indian medicine, it's all there. And now you're ready to
Those
eat.
look good. I'm gonna have to get some flowers and put them on my dish. That's
Yeah,
great.
so I typically buy them at Whole Foods. That's the only place I know in town that sells them. They might have them. Sometimes the co-op will have them, and maybe you could get them at like that Mother. I forget the name of it. The place out on Milwaukee. This is Nature's Choice or something grocery store. Natural Choice. Maybe that's it. Anyway. All right. Well, good.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you. Enjoy the meal. Send me a note. Tell me what you think. I'll send you the recipes and all of the different specifications from a medicinal standpoint.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Have a lovely night.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.